Hi everyone. Welcome to Physics and STEM Talks, where we discover the unfiltered reality of research. I'm your host, Vaibhav Sharma, and today we are joined with a very special guest, Dr. Anupam Bharadwaj. He is currently an assistant professor at IUCAP Pune. During his research journey, he has visited a lot of countries, including China, Italy, Germany, etc. And his research journey is backed by most of the prestigious fellowships in the world, including Marie Curie ESO Fellowship and EA CAO Fellowship. So today we'll discuss all about his research journey as well as some fellowships. He has done his bachelor's, master's from DU, as well as he started his research journey, which is PhD from DU as well. During his PhD, he visited ESO and he was awarded PhD Studentship during his PhD. He visited ESO at Germany. And after completing his PhD, for few months, he was at IUCAA as a research visitor. Then he went to continue his research as a postdoctoral fellow in China. After completing his postdoctoral research at China, he was awarded EA CAO Fellowship, and for this he went to the South Korea. And lastly, he was awarded the one of the most prestigious fellowship, which is Marie Curie Fellowship. And to continue his research, he visited Italy. And then, after the Marie Curie Fellow, he was appointed as an assistant professor, which is equivalent to the scientist E post at IUCAA Pune. So let's dive in conversation with Dr. Anupam Bharadwaj. So first of all, I would like to thank you, Dr. Bharadwaj, for accepting my invitation to join this podcast series. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Vaibhav, for hosting me, and I look forward to having this conversation with you.
Uh, Thank you. So first, my usual question that I ask to my guest, आपको रिसर्च के बारे में कब पता चला? Is it a ड्यू और ये कुछ ड्यू का एनवायरनमेंट था या किसी मेंटर या सुपरवाइजर का इन्फ्लुएंस था that you started or you get interested in the research?
Yeah, so I think as a student coming from Uttarakhand, very remote, hilly areas, I was always interested about stars like any of us are. But I never thought about taking it up as a profession.
Okay.
So, as a school student, then you are at that time. I think we only knew about opportunities in engineering
Mhm.
or medicine. तो या तो इंजीनियर बन जाइए या डॉक्टर बन जाइए. These are the options that at least we were aware of 20 years back, 20-25 years back. So after finishing my school, I came to Delhi University, and I in fact came to prepare for again all these kind of exams. And in the meantime, I also took admission in Delhi University.
Mhm.
And when you start going to college, start interacting with a completely different world, right? Because there are people coming from different places with different ideas, different goals. You start getting to know about all these opportunities. Okay, there is also a possibility that if you do higher education, you can go into research. For us, higher education at that point of time was okay, you did your studies, now you become a teacher, right? So I think in during my bachelor's, we had one of our physics professors, Professor Aranyabhuti Bhattacharya.
Mhm.
Last I remember, he was at JNU. I think he has moved from JNU. He actually he was very young faculty, so he used to tell us कि go to research में जाइए, right?
Mhm.
जो भी आप करेंगे अपने लिए करेंगे. You will feel if you do well, you will feel satisfied, and that probably put the first seed in of thinking about going into research. So
Mhm.
then I started exploring opportunities. In fact, I remember during second year of my bachelor's, I applied to IUCAA VSP program, and I was not
Okay.
selected. So but that at least gave us the idea that there are other options, and those are the options you need to explore. So instead of then going into engineering, although I had a good rank, I decided to stick to research. I think by the second year I was quite determined that I want to go into higher education, and then we'll see. uh, by the time I finished my undergrad, I was quite focused on going into experimental physics. So I think I did internships. I did one internship at IISc during for this INSA summer school program, and there when I went to these labs as a young student who is enthusiastic about experimental physics, I was selected for this condensed matter physics lab, and I realized that you don't get access to instruments. These are of course expensive instruments. They don't just let you handle that. So you are basically doing some sort of sample preparation, then that sample goes into the lab, then they just send you the results. So I was very disappointed that I didn't get to work on this, and then sometimes these instruments are not functional, that kind of problem. Sometimes the time is not available. So I think that discouraged me a bit about experimental physics at that point of time. And at this, during the second year of my master's, I think we had the option whether you want to have, you had to select your specialization subjects. So
Mhm.
at that point of time, I was midway whether to go in experimental or whether to go in theoretical. So I took a very weird combination of specialization. I took astronomy, astrophysics, and GTR cosmology, as well as condensed matter. Right? so, so I think by the time I finished my master's, I was pretty much inclined to go into research in astronomy, astrophysics, cosmology, and
Correct.
as it happened that I ended up doing PhD in that. So I think for me, but in person, the research as an idea came up very late.
Mhm.
But I think nowadays the young generation, they are very aware of what are the opportunities. We came from a background where there were not much of focus in this field.
So, when did you feel you had a good flavor of research? Is it your master's, PhD, or even if you moved out to India then?
Yeah, I think I got into research only during second year of my master's, because
Mhm.
you have to do a dissertation project.
Yes.
And I started working with Professor Patrick Dasgupta at Delhi University.
Ah,
Fantastic teacher. I think most people know that. Students
yes.
who have interacted with him, they know that.
Mhm.
And with him, I worked on supermassive black holes.
Okay.
So most of the analytical work, but started to get into reading papers, trying to come up with some analytical solutions, and that's when I got first flavor of going actually into some sort of proper research mode. And then of course with later that year and early next year, within 1 year, I was into a PhD program at Delhi University. So that was on slightly different topic, of course, on stars, but
Mhm.
yeah, we had some ideas on how to approach the problem.
Okay, so I think being a DU student, you had a good exposure, and you can. I feel you would have known like you can do a PhD abroad, but you chose to stay at Delhi University. So why was that?
Yeah, so I see again, although I had come to Delhi, I came from a background uh, in Uttarakhand, very small place. And when you think about PhD abroad, coming from a middle class family, usually we were not aware of whether there are these fully funded fellowships that one can avail. So
Correct, correct.
it seemed like going abroad is a completely different level, right? So at that time, my idea was that okay, if I want to get into research, I have to explore within India. There is no way I can get abroad. And within India, if you are going for some astronomy, astrophysics, at that point, 10 years back, I think very limited IITs had astronomy
Yes, yes,
departments.
yes,
So
yes.
you have to go either to top research institutes, IUCAA, TIFR, IIA, RRI, those kind of things. And it
Mm-hmm.
was quite difficult to get into those. So
Mm-hmm.
I went for interviews to some of these places. I think IUCAA, I didn't clear INET exam. So this is also a, I have already pointed out that at IUCAA I didn't clear VSP, I didn't clear INET, and yet I'm a faculty at IUCAA. So I think this is for the students who keep receiving. Last year I organized this IUCAA summer school, so I received many emails that, oh, at IUCAA we don't get this opportunity, we were not selected. So it's very very competitive. Right? Everything
Yes.
is very very competitive. So yeah, I got away from that question, right? Yeah, so I think at that point of time in Delhi, I didn't think that it is possible for me both financially and personally to go abroad and stay that far away from my family responsibilities, and so decided to work from India for my thesis.
Yes, I think this is the main idea that the idea of this podcast came in my mind through this only because people of India or students of India are not aware enough that they can avail fully funded programs abroad. So this is why this idea came. Like if I can have a guest like you, those who have availed at least at the later stage of your research journey, you have availed a fully funded research journey so they may get motivated. So this is the whole idea of this podcast. Okay, so you did your master's PhD from the DU University, then you went to China, South Korea, Germany. So first of all, before going further, I would like to know what is this PhD studentship at ESO? I didn't know about this. So for the first time, I'm hearing this statement actually, studentship.
Yes. So studentship usually a program that you are enrolled as a PhD student at some place, right?
Hmm.
And then it's not just ESO. There are other places also that offer these kind of studentship. That
Okay.
as a PhD student from some institute, you
Hmm.
can go to this particular institute which is offering studentship, work on
Hmm.
your thesis project in collaboration with their local faculties,
Hmm.
and that is a similar concept at ESO. So ESO has a PhD studentship program for which,
Hmm.
if you want to apply for that, uh, you have to have a PhD enrollment
Hmm.
at any university anywhere in the world, and then you have to write a proposal to ESO whenever these applications are open. So you apply for a proposal that, okay, you can spend up to 2 years of
Okay.
your PhD thesis. So you will spend your 2 years at ESO working on a specific problem related to your thesis that uses ESO facilities and ESO resources. Uh, you have to find a co-supervisor at ESO who is willing to support your proposal, and if it
Okay.
gets accepted, then ESO provides you a fully funded position for depending on whether you have asked for 1 year or 2 year.
Okay.
So this was, I think I had applied for this during my PhD program, and I was
Yes.
successful. So then I got to spend some time there.
And from where you get to know about this studentship?
Yeah, so one of my seniors, Sonali Sachdeva, I don't know if you
Yes.
know her.
Yeah.
So she had collaborated with one of the ESO faculties,
Okay.
and when they were working on a paper, he invited her to visit ESO, but that was
Okay.
in Chile. So when
Okay.
she went to Chile, she became aware of this, and then
Hmm.
she came back to India. She told us that there is also this kind of opportunities that you can apply.
Great.
So I got to know from her, and I keep telling her that you opened this new way
Ah,
for me, that okay, there is also this opportunity. Of course, I applied to Garching in Germany.
mhm.
That's the headquarter of European Southern Observatory,
Yes,
and
yes.
yeah, so I get to spend time there, uh, which is very good.
Yeah. It's great opportunity, and first of all, you got an opportunity and you fill the form. That is very important because people get to know about the opportunities, but they feared whether if they'll get selected or not. This is great, actually.
Yeah.
Okay, so from Delhi University, I mean from India to China, Germany, Italy, South Korea, you have been in a lot of countries, and these are the countries where you spend a significant amount of time, right? And I know you have been presenting your work in many other countries. But how do you think how these places change your mind as a researcher?
Yeah, so um, of course it depends the research culture, the culture in general, the people. These things are different at different places.
Hmm.
So after finishing my PhD, when you started looking for postdocs, I think the first offer I had was from Kavli Institute in Beijing.
Hmm.
Uh, Again, as a Indian thinking about that, okay, you want to go to China for this position. Uh, it was a bit scary thought to say initially, but I had been there previously, and the institute is very good. It's very nice place situated in a beautiful campus of Peking University. So I had the option of going to Chile or going to China. I decided to stay closer to home, so I said, okay, I will go to China. And I think, again, the culture varies, but the research and your research problem and uh, how you approach that research problem, it is entirely up to you, right? Different places offer you different possibilities and different opportunities. So how you complement your research and your interest to that particular place, that is, I think, up to individuals.
Hmm.
uh, I can give from personal point of view. When I moved to China, the person I was supposed to work with, he moved to Australia. He got a better position there. So I was there as an fresh out of PhD student. Right? I
Hmm.
just finished my PhD, and that's where it hits you that now you are an independent researcher,
Independent
right?
researcher.
And so you have to work, you have to develop your own ideas, you have to get your own data. And as a PhD student, you can people are supportive, they give you data if you want. As a postdoc, you are also a competitor, right? So the same collaborator who might have given you his data to work on as a PhD student, he would be a bit skeptical that okay, now this guy is independent, right? He will work on that. So that changes that. And when I went there, I didn't know how to start. So I started exploring what I can do with facilities there. So at Kavli, there were people who were working on young stars and their variability. I work on evolved stars. That's what my thesis was. So then I
Hmm.
started branching out. So I wrote a paper with a colleague there on a completely different kind of young stars, about which I knew nothing during my PhD. And then during my PhD, most of my work was on data analysis, large surveys, time domain. And then when I went to China, I started seeing that there are possibilities to get into observations. So China had bought time at major telescopes
Hmm.
for their researchers in astronomy and astrophysics. So I thought,
Hmm.
okay, now I am also affiliated to China. I can also apply for these large telescopes. So that's where my first proposal on this was CFST, Canada France Hawaii Telescope. It got accepted, and that's from there I started getting into observational astronomy. So uh, everywhere there will be different opportunities, there will be different resources, there will be different cultural shocks. I'm a vegetarian. I survived 2 years in China and 1 year in Korea. So you start learning
Oh.
things, you start cooking yourself. And now, over the last 6, 10 years, I've become so expert that now I cook even put dinner at IUCAA. I don't go to canteen because eating 2 times in canteen is just too much for me.
Yes.
So I think that's the same. Then I moved to Italy, where I got to work with theoretical modeling experts, and so that's where you connect, you get into something else.
Hmm.
So different places, you get different opportunities, and how you grab those opportunities, I think it is up to individuals. There are always challenges when you move to a new place, especially abroad. Settling down in a new place, new environment every 2 years is a very, very difficult task for postdoctoral
Yes.
positions, especially because you also have to be productive enough that you get another position
Yes.
after your
Yes.
current one.
Then you get this Marie Curie, right? So, what was your, I mean, this is, I think, this is the moment when a researcher feel this is something big I have done. I think this is, so what was your emotions? What was your thinking when you get an email from the committee like you have been awarded this Marie Curie Fellowship?
Yeah, so again, these are things I told you about ESO fellowship, right? So I
Yes.
didn't tell you that the first time I applied for ESO fellowship, it was not given to me, ESO studentship. I was not
Okay.
awarded. I
Okay.
applied again 6 months later.
Okay.
So again, this is, you have to be persistent. Failures will always be there. So
Okay.
if I had decided that applying first time that okay, I'm not going to get it, they have already rejected my application, but I would have not never got it. Right. The same with Marie Curie. I applied. I was planning to apply at ESO because I had a previous experience with ESO and I knew people there. But when I had almost prepared a proposal and I sent
Hmm.
it to my collaborators, and then they found out at ESO that ESO has stopped hosting externally funded fellows
Okay.
because they have their own fellowship program which is very rigorous. They have enough money, they don't care about externally funded fellows, so they stopped it because there were always people with Humboldt, Marie Curie, and a number of German DAAT and other fellowship. They used to come in, and that ESO requires that their fellows do some service. So
Okay.
those in Chile, they spend 20% time, 25% of time on ESO activities. Those in Chile spend 50%, and those in Germany spend 25%. So then she told me that ESO will not host they will not give you the agreement that they will host Marie Curie. So then I started exploring, talking to my other collaborators, and then in Italy, if you have ever used stellar models, they are the ones. Italians are the expert, right? They have evolutionary models, pulsation models, all these different kind of models of stars. So then I revised my entire proposal to make it more complementary from observational to
Okay.
theoretical one. And if anyone ever applies, if you ever apply to Marie Curie, which I strongly recommend that you do, you will find that it's a very long proposal. You do not just write about your science, but there are many,
Hmm.
many other questions. What is the impact? How will you disseminate your results? What do you bring to your institute? What your institute brings to you? Where do you see after yourself after Marie Curie Fellows? It's a 10,
Hmm.
15 page long proposal. So you have to completely
Goodness.
optimize that to your now new host institution.
Yes.
And I didn't know anyone who had Marie Curie Fellowship.
Okay.
So what I did is I went through the web, I looked at the instruction manuals of Marie Curie and how to apply for that, and eventually it was successful. So and at that time I think in Korea, it was COVID time. I was at
Hmm.
Korea, so I was very happy that okay, now I can go to Europe and work with these collaborators.
Hmm.
And that I think when you do all this, and then you see a positive result, that is very, very satisfying, because this is what you are trying to achieve, and this is of course a major fellowship. So you know that, okay, if you go back somewhere, if you go to some institute for your next job, they will at least shortlist you or see your application slightly differently, that okay, this guy has secured a very competitive fellowship of European Commission. So that puts you slightly ahead of your peers.
So, what was the happiest moment when you got this Marie Curie Fellowship or when you were awarded this Professor MKV Bappu Gold Medal?
Yeah, I think well, both are for different purposes, right?
Yes.
And any recognition is very important for, especially for young researchers like me. But I would rate Marie Curie certainly much more higher, because first of all, it's a globally competitive fellowship, right?
Yes.
Secondly, it came at a time where I had spent 3 years in Asia, and ultimately I wanted to come back to India. And this has
Yes.
um, always been at the back of my mind, that ultimately I want to do or continue my research in India.
Yes.
So when I got that Marie Curie Fellowship, it was very important for me to get one position either in Europe or in US, because somehow we Indians, or we value that more, that okay, someone is coming from Western countries, has a degree, or fellowships or whatever, that. So somewhere, especially if you apply to some specific places, it might be valued more. So I wanted to go, and also it's important for the growth of as a researcher, that you explore different places, different environments. So certainly Marie Curie, I think, ranks higher. It was at a very important point in my career.
From someone, so let us talk about your research very briefly. So, someone, suppose, who is not from the astronomy background, so how will you describe your research that you are doing currently in a in a way that they can understand?
Yeah, so I work on variable stars. So I am a if I don't do not know anything about astronomy, so I'm just a normal person looking at a night sky. So you see stars, right, or point sources, and if you can somehow measure how bright those stars are, so any normal star will have some brightness, right? Let's say a 5 watt bulb, right? Something like that. But a variable star will give you, its brightness will vary, right? It will change. So instead of a 5 watt, it will become 6 watt someday, it will become 7 watt someday, it will again become 5.5, it might become 6.5. So for a normal star, you have just one data point. You have just
Yes,
one point, right? 5 watt.
yes,
And if you have nothing else, this is the only information you have about that star. On the contrary, for variable star, you have 5 6 data point, or depending on how many times you observe, because it is varying, you will have a different number. You will have 5 6 7 8 9 10. So you have that many extra information for that star if it is a variable. So I think that is the idea, that if you have a variable star, you have added observables, you have additional observations that you can take about these stars, and that those observations help you better understand your models. Because if you have a model, you need to compare your predictions with observations. But if you have only one observations, it is very difficult to pinpoint which model is better. So this is what we do. We use variable stars because they are very important for modeling, and then you can use their properties for many different kind of things. The kind of variable stars that I use, they are called standard candles. They have a very fixed luminosity. So luminosity is a proxy for distances in astronomy, because
Okay.
if you put a 5-watt bulb at 5 kilometers distance, it will be very faint. If you put it nearby, it will be very bright. So depending on how faint and how bright they are, you can actually measure their distances. And
Distance.
distances are important in astronomy for any kind of science, because
Correct.
these are the fundamental quantities. If you do not know the distance, do not know the distance to any star or a galaxy, you cannot infer its intrinsic properties. So this is what my science is. I use different kind of stars to measure distances farther and farther and farther in the universe. And eventually what that does is that if you can reach very very far distances, you can actually try to map what is the size of our universe.
Yes, correct.
Right, so if you can map very very large distances, then you can infer that how big our universe is. You can, if you know how big our universe is, you can simply assume that okay, the light has traveled from that point to here, right? So from distance and velocity, you can determine time, how much time it has taken. So that gives you the age of the universe,
Age
how
of the universe.
long the universe have lived. So this is the
Yes,
kind of things I do with the stars.
correct. Nice. Oh, as you said, so as a researcher, you were doing, you were a Marie Curie Fellow at Italy, but back of the mind, you always had one thing: you want to come up in India, you want to come again India and continue your research in India. So, what one thing that foreign or abroad give, or they teach the lesson that you bring to India? What is that one thing?
Yeah, so I think the research culture abroad and in India is quite different. I'm
Mm-hmm.
not talking about every Indian institute or every foreign institute, but in general,
Mm-hmm.
right, there are
Yeah.
always exceptions.
Yes.
I think in abroad, what you get is a sort of independentness. As a
Mm-hmm.
researcher, you are supposed to work mostly independently, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And the kind of collaborations that you have with people are
Mm-hmm.
actually collaborations, not sort of supervision, right?
Okay.
So I'll give you one example. So in one of the meetings where we had a lot of foreign collaborators and
Mm-hmm.
there were students, one of Indian faculties said, he was introducing his students and he said, these guys work for me, right?
Okay.
Then there was a foreign faculty, he was introducing his students. He said, these guys work with me. Right?
Okay.
So that sort of a difference
Two
of,
statements gave a lot of difference of
yes,
Indian research culture.
yeah. So you can, I'm not saying, of course, that every individuals is that, but
Yes.
as a PhD student in India, you feel like okay, you are working on a very specific problem that is set up by your supervisor and you're trying to explore that particular problem, which is also good because a lot of times students do not know where to start, right? Because especially in India, we don't have a rigorous research problem at the master's level, and you
Yes.
only have it once you get into PhD. Abroad, people start working on their master's thesis as a proper research problem, so they already have some background.
Okay.
But I think this is the sort of independentness when you go abroad, and I went abroad for my postdoctoral fellowships, and I had all of my positions were completely independent. I was not working on a specific PI led projects. So
Mm-hmm.
wherever I went, I had to develop my own projects. I had to write my own proposals, uh, do my own observations, own data analysis. So basically, nothing was given to me that okay, this is the data we have, you work on this. So I think that's what my experience abroad taught me, that I can be an independent researcher, right? I do not need to be involved in a big survey to have access to data, and then I can work on that data and get publications. I By the end of my PhD fellowships, I felt like, okay, if I have some idea in my brain that I want to work on, I can develop it from this scratch and take it up to publication level. So I think that's something I got to learn. Another thing was how to develop collaborations and networking, because in India, I think one of the difficult points is that you don't get sufficient funding for attending conferences, attending workshops, meetings, and these are the places where you actually learn a lot, right? Because you connect with people who are working in your field. You can develop collaborations, you can develop joint projects. And since I was independent fellow everywhere, I was very, very fortunate that I got to present my work in many, many different conferences. I did not have to worry about funding, I had sufficient funding. So that allowed me to have collaborations across the globe at different
Mm-hmm.
people for the different projects. I could reach out to different people, and that's where you start to build a network of collaborators. Eventually, I think last year we have a International Space Science Institute team, which I am leading, and this has
Mm-hmm.
researchers from all across the globe, from US, Europe, China, Japan, India. So that's where how I got to know all these people, and then when I had the opportunity to work on a project where I'm leading and bring all these people together, so our proposal was successful. So I think that's how. If I was only in India, I probably wouldn't have met all these people, and then you don't get those kind of networking going.
Okay, so like you said, this networking and collaborations is very important part of the of a PhD life. But suppose, like as also you mentioned that like I coming from the IIT, I have a sufficient fund. I can at least attend one conference or one workshop outside the India. I have that much of fund, but most of the universities don't provide this.
Yes.
So how do you tackle this problem, or how would you suggest or advise a PhD student who is in research, doing research from those universities, but they want to make collaborations, but they do not have funds to attend the conferences and workshops? Because this is actually very important part of the PhD life.
Yes. Yeah, so I think one aspect is if you are working on a specific problem, right?
Mm-hmm.
And when you have taken it to a publication level, right? You sometimes put your paper on archive, and sometimes, it is accepted. And
Mm-hmm.
if you feel that you can connect that paper, and if it's a good publication but requires additional amount of data, additional amount of ideas, and you can try to reach out to some experts in that field. You introduce yourself, introduce your publications. Of course, I would say 70-80% of the time you might not hear any response, but it's something that might put you in touch with these people if they are if they find your publication interesting. So I'll tell you the same about ESO studentship.
Mm-hmm.
So when I wrote, I think I was working on some project, and I had written an email to my ESO co-supervisor
Mm-hmm.
that I'm working on this problem, and I noticed one of the papers that you were author, and I think I would like to have that data set. It is not available, and something, and I did not get a response.
Okay.
She was actually not the first author. I think I wrote to both of them, and
Okay.
probably there was a miscommunication, or they just ignored, right? It's just an
Okay.
email from a student.
Yes.
Uh, then, when I wrote an email maybe a year later regarding ESO studentship to my co supervisor, um, she responded, right? And then, when I actually went there, she told me that I saw two emails from you when you wrote about this ESO studentship. I noticed that I had another email from you, which I never responded. But I saw that you had two emails. One was asking about data, and then 1 year later, you were asking about ESO studentship. So, and then you see, because in my studentship email, I had listed publications that actually used some data similar to their papers and that kind of
Mhm.
thing. So they noticed that, okay, this guy was actually working on some data that we also published, and then he was actually able to take that up to publication without our response and without our data. So then they notice these small things, right? If people just write an email to me, okay, I want to do a PhD project with you with no background, nothing, I'm most likely going to ignore it. But
Yes.
maybe once there is something, some concrete information there, then you are likely to get a response. So I think that's how you can try to build networks. If you go to even one conference, you still meet many different people. Try to
Yes.
interact with them. Just introduce yourself. Show one plot that you feel is relevant to you know so sometimes it's, of course, don't be annoying, but just in casual interactions with people, just introduce yourself, talk to them if you are interested, seriously interested in collaborating with someone. Go through their work, discuss their work. That I'm also trying to work something like that. Do you have any specific projects, data set that you think we can work on? And I think this is how you try to reach out to people. It's very difficult in academia, because now that I'm a faculty, I receive hundreds of emails every week that we want to do projects. I can only take 2 3 students for a master's thesis. I can't have 10. So it's very difficult. So sometimes I always try to respond, but sometimes you are too busy to just respond. Right?
Okay, great advice to all the university PhDs who try to make collaborations with
Another thing is that
foreign
start
countries.
exploring for the conferences. Always see if there is some funding. You know.
Yes.
Because a lot of these big conferences, they do support some students from, especially
Okay.
from developing countries. I think I went probably quite a few conferences where I got accommodation support, where I got
Yes, yes.
tuition fee waiver. Then of course, for not everybody can afford airfare, not everybody can afford some things, but even if
Yes,
you have to pay 10 20,000 from your own pocket, I think it's the fellowship
it's
is
worth
now
it.
sufficiently good if you don't have any specific responsibility. So if
Yes.
you can spend 20,000 30,000 to go abroad, and spend 1 week also for science as well as a tourist, uh,
Yes.
thing, it's
Correct,
worth
correct,
it.
correct. It's worth it. It's worth it. Also, there are few fellowships that Indian government provide, like ANRF, ITCA, and COSPAR. I mean, it's CSIR.
Yeah.
So they provide airfare. So the students should also look for these. I think people are not aware of
Yeah.
these type of fundings. Okay, so let us talk about a bit regarding the fellowships, which is also considered as the researcher's passport, because we visit, we interact, we collaborate using these fellowships. So first of all, let us talk about how many fellowships did you apply? Because you won, I think, two, right? MACAO and Marie Curie. I don't know about other fellowships that you have been awarded, but if yes, please list all of them.
Yeah, so I think for postdocs, the ones I was successful as fellowships was obviously KIA Fellowship. It's again an independent fellowship of Kavli
Okay.
Institute.
Hmm.
I had a very prestigious fellowship called the Gruber Foundation Fellowship. It is awarded by the Gruber Foundation and the International
Okay.
Astronomical Union. This
Okay.
is not exactly for postdoc, it's
Hmm.
to complement your postdoctoral research.
Okay. It is along with the postdoctoral
Yes,
research.
so
Okay.
they get, I think they give, at that time it was, I think, 50,000 US dollars. You get
Okay.
to complement your research, and they usually give this fellowship to two students, two postdocs. I think now it has increased to 75, but they, instead of giving 75 to one, they give it to three students or typically like
Three
that.
students.
Right.
Okay. Okay.
So this is by International Astronomical Union, and this is funded by the Gruber Foundation, the same fellowship that is very, very prestigious, the um, Gruber Fellowship in Cosmology, which is given to very senior cosmologist,
Mm-hmm.
well-known cosmologist.
Mm-hmm.
So I think this was a very, very prestigious fellowship, which I had got in 2020, I think during the COVID time. Uh,
Okay.
After that, I had got East Asian Core Observatories Association Fellowship, which was also a very, very good funded fellowship. I think it is between China, Taiwan, South Korea, and Japan. These are four East Asian countries,
Mm-hmm.
and they have two component. One is East Asian Observatory Fellowship, which is to work on their observatory. I
Okay.
think they were operating JCMT at that point. I don't know which ones they are operating now. And the one that I got was again the independent one, that you do your science at any two of these countries.
Mm-hmm.
This is again a very, very good fellowship. It is very well paid. I think they used to pay 5,000 US dollars per month
Mm-hmm.
in Asia, which is
Okay. A
fantastic.
lot. Yes.
So, and then I got Marie Curie. Marie Curie I've already described. So I think these are the ones that were major fellowships that were successful. Then I had some PI postdoctoral fellowship offers. One was from Chile.
Mm-hmm.
There was another one from Germany, which I had declined because I'd got others. So
Mm-hmm.
there are two, three positions I'd got, but among these, I think there were many, many which were unsuccessful. Right? So I was on the waiting list for ESO fellowship. I was on the
Mm-hmm.
waiting list for LSST Dirac fellowship. I was on the waiting list for there was another one in US. I'm forgetting now. And then there were rejections. I think for my first postdoc, I probably applied 20 and I got two.
Okay.
For
All of them was fellowships
No,
or
no, no.
independent positions.
All postdoctoral
Okay,
positions.
positions. Okay.
So
Okay.
for all 20 postdoctoral positions, including the fellowships, I got two, one fellowship
Mm-hmm.
and one postdoc position.
Position. Mm-hmm.
For during the uh, EOCA and Marie Curie, they were both during the same time that I had applied. But because of
Mm-hmm.
COVID, I first went to Korea. I think that time I had got three,
Mm-hmm.
probably again similar 20 or so applications. But I
Okay.
was also on wait list for two, three of those,
Okay.
but I never made it to the final cutoff. So I think,
Okay.
yeah, so you can imagine that the success rate is usually less than that 10%. So you have to keep applying.
Yes.
So I can give you an example of ESO. So um, there are typically five fellowships and there are more than 250 applications. Right?
For five fellowships. Okay.
So it's you can
It's
imagine
very
that you are
competitive.
competing with 50 people for one position, right? So
Yes.
it's
Yes.
all these fellowships are very, very competitive.
Yes.
But unless you apply, you don't know, right?
Yes. Correct.
You have to keep applying to different places, and that's a very, very critical part.
Okay. So what do you think? Because you have been awarded a lot of prestigious fellowships. So what do you think the committee of those fellowships, where do they look most in the application of the applicant?
Yeah, so for fellowships, I think different institutes have different priorities, right?
Hmm.
And depending on their priorities, they look for what they want. So if you are looking at ESO, let's say ESO fellowship. So when we say fellowships, fellowships are actually independent. So anyone who is exceptionally bright in
Hmm.
their own research area, even if it is not relevant to that institute, right?
Hmm.
It
Hmm.
is likely that your position will be considered. Okay.
Okay.
at some places what happens is that these fellowships come with some sort of service, right? Like
Okay.
ESO requires that you spend 25% of your time on either instrumentation, or you go to the observatory to work as an observational astronomer, or you spend time in outreach in ESO supernova or something like that. So even if you have a very good, you know, publication record, your application is outstanding, you have to show that you are willing to get involved and spend some part of your time as required by those institutes for different activities. So all these fellowships, I think they are looking first of all for exceptional scientific talent, right?
Mm-hmm.
What unique thing you bring to that institute, right?
Mm-hmm.
And how complementary you can make your science to available resources and facilities at that institute. So I think these are the three things that one has to show, and this is what the referees are, or the committee is looking for. That
Okay.
why should we hire this person? What is he bringing here? And okay, he's bringing something brilliant, but how is he utilizing our facilities to do that brilliant science, right?
Mm-hmm.
Often, a lot of time, what I have heard is that, you know, you can be a brilliant astronomer, right? But if you just sit in your office and write nature papers, a lot of some of these institutes will, or some of these organizations will not really appreciate that. And you
Okay.
can be a brilliant researcher, you work in your office, you're spending time with yourself, and you don't need particular organization, right? So the question again is, why should we hire you, right? Of course, if someone is exceptionally brilliant, you want them to be at your institute. But I'm just saying that that's the kind of thing uh, all these applicants, or whenever you are applying for positions, you have to connect to these specific places, right?
Mm-hmm.
And again, I will give you the example that when I applied for example, for ESO fellowship and other fellowships,
Mm-hmm.
uh, during the interview, I was not asked even a single science question, right?
Okay.
So at ESO, the entire discussion was things like, uh, okay, some weird questions like, okay, if you find out your colleague is doing some sort of plagiarism, what will you do, right? If you So they want to know what kind of a person you are, what kind of a individual you are, because if you have been shortlisted in 20 out of 250, that means they are happy to have any one of you as a
Yes.
researcher, right? You are already in the top 10, right? But you don't want someone who is completely cut off, who is just
I see.
doing whose sole aim is to just write papers, or very limited, narrow field, right? You want your with the individual, you want your institution to grow. That's the whole idea of fellowships. If otherwise, why would I give a fellowship? I would just hire a postdoc which is working specifically on my project, my problem, my
Correct. Correct.
institute's
Correct.
problem. So the whole idea of the fellowship is that you bring someone who is exceptional, but he takes forward the institute and institute's facilities along with his research.
Yes.
So I think that kind of, and again, for the LSST Dirac, that again, I would say that I was not asked any specific science question in
Okay.
the interviews. And this is what I've noticed, that in most of the major fellowship interviews, they already know your science from your application. They will probably ask you just to give a broad 2 minutes discussion on why do you think your science is important, what are you working on, that's it.
Great. This is for the first time hearing, and I am very happy to hear this. We,
Yeah, I mean, of course,
actually, research is all about the collaboration and networking, right? So isolation won't work in the long run. In the long run.
yeah, yeah. So astronomy specifically is now a collaborative science, right?
Yes.
If you are just doing it yourself, um, you are probably not getting into right projects or not right problems.
Yes. Okay, so like I am a PhD student, so all of these fellowships, I think you have been awarded. That was when you had a research experience as an independent researcher. You
Yeah.
had a postdoc of 2 years at Cowley. So as like I am a PhD student, and many of those who are in the PhD. So what we feel ki I'll write a fellowship when I'm ready. So this, how do you describe this ready word? What is the correct time of this readiness? Because I think there is no readiness. So, what is the correct time that I should, as a PhD student, look for the fellowships, or I should look for the fellowships only after experience of 1 or 2 years as an independent researcher? What do you suggest? What do you advise?
I think you should apply as soon as you are looking for positions. You should
Hmm.
apply anywhere and everywhere. Right, the market
Okay.
is really tough. Of course, you have to be realistic. Right,
Hmm.
you have to look at your own profile. And
Hmm.
uh, if someone has just one publication, two publication, and not so, unless those publications are really great, right?
Hmm.
Not just really qualitative publications, because it is unlikely that you will get even shortlisted for major fellowships. So
Okay.
if someone is considering 250 applications, right, the first cut is usually how many papers they have. There will be a minimum threshold on how many publications these have, what kind of projects they have led, if they have some independent grants. I don't know. I mean, I'm just speculating or giving some examples that there will be some minimum threshold, right? If
Yes.
you feel that you do not make that minimum threshold, right, then it is unlikely or it is a bit unrealistic to expect that okay, you will get a fellowship. But if you don't apply, you don't know, right? So I would always encourage people to apply, right? Even if you are a fresh PhD student, you have some two three good publications, you start applying, and that if unless you start writing proposals, right? So I think one of the issues that we or the PhD students or postdocs face is that if they are writing a proposal to 20 different places, there will be usually be a same proposal, right?
Hmm.
90% of the content of that is exactly the same for all of these
Hmm.
20, right?
Hmm.
And then you change 10% here and there and just submit it. So I think for PI positions, this might work, right? For fellowships, this doesn't work, right?
Okay.
I think the reader can infer whether it's a normal general position or general application, or has the applicant put enough effort to optimize this for this particular position. Okay,
Okay.
this is something you can figure out. You can read. We also read hundreds of postdoc positions at IUCAA. So this is
Hmm.
something you can read. If you actually read the research proposal, you can feel that whether the applicant has put enough effort in trying to make this application particularly focused for this positions at IUCAA.
Hmm.
So I think you have to put some effort, right? If you have to go through the website of these major organizations, what kind of expertise there are, what is their latest things that are happening there, relevant to your research, who are the people that are there, whom with whom you would like to collaborate, which particular, it's even better if there's someone who has some particular expertise, particular paper recently came up, and then you can relate that with those kind of research problem with your research problem. So then it keeps the reader engaged, right? if someone is reading your fellowship application, right, you start writing something about your research, then you say, okay, I've done this, I've done this, I've done that, and then I want at ESO, I want to use this, and I want to get this, right? That's just a normal. If you spend some more time, you say, okay, this is my problem, this requires this and this to proceed, right?
Mm-hmm.
There at so this guy has already worked on similar problem, right? He
Okay.
has used this facility, he has this experience. I have a different idea, a different problem that can utilize this problem. So it's basically trying to make it a bit more personalized, a bit more engaging for the committee members to read, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, there has to be some sort of novelty, some sort of uniqueness, some sort of innovation in your proposals. Um, so I think if you have all these content and if you have good enough minimum threshold of publications, expertise, proceedings, exposures, grants, etc., etc. So then you at least make the cut. And once you are shortlisted, as I said, they are happy to have any one of those 20, 25 that they are interviewing, right? So then it's up to how you can impress the committee based as an individual rather than as a researcher. This has been at least my experience that you know the committees are interacting with you more as an individual level during the interviews rather than as a researcher
Researcher.
level. And
Okay, great. Great to know this. I'll be going through the process. I'll remember all these things. The good part of having these type of podcasts, I am getting aware of a lot of things.
yes, of course. I just a question came to my mind that in one of the interviews I was asked, okay, you are going in a lift, or no, you are in a taxi coming from airport to your institute. Taxi
Mhm.
driver asks you, what do you work on, right? How are you going
Uh-huh.
to explain in 30 seconds,
Ex-
right? So
Correct.
you start saying, okay, I work on EGNs or Blazars, then
Yeah, this won't work.
you're lost, right? The guy
Yeah.
is lost. So you should know how to. Have you ever thought about these small things as a researcher? I think this is what, if you have thought about these small things, then you probably can think about bigger problems. If you have
Yes.
just been focused on bigger problem and you are completely lost at the basic level, then that's not a good impression.
Hmm. Okay. So a lot of discussions on the fellowships and the applications. So let us come to the era of AI. So let us discuss briefly how this AI, because like we as an astronomer, we do a lot of data science. We analyze a lot of data. So now the AI has come. So a lot of part can be done by the AI. Not now, within next 5 years, AI will be handling a lot of data processing. So what do you think? What will be the major impact of AI on the astronomy, which deals a lot of data reduction and data analysis?
Yeah, so well, astronomy has always been sort of data science, right? And all of us astronomers are actually in some way doing data analysis, right? Whether we are
Yes,
taking
yes,
images or whether we are taking spectra, you have to do some sort of data analysis.
yes.
Um, of course, with the amount of data volumes that are now and that are always going to increase,
Hmm.
is going to be almost impossible for us astronomers to actually use our traditional data analysis methods
Traditional
to
methods.
actually infer these large volumes of data, and that's a reality. We cannot run
Yes.
away from that. Yeah? So we have to get involved in these latest technology, latest advancements in machine learning and artificial intelligence. At the same time, I think these AIs, MLs, coding, of course, they will be advanced enough to to do data processing for you, to do some sort of data analysis for you. They can make pipelines, they can get you the data. But I think that intuitiveness, that idea, that explainability, and how to reach to a, how to raise the right question, how to ask the right question, and how to interpret the answers correctly. I think that will still be up to individuals and
Yes.
towards researchers. So your means of processing the data, curing the data, analyzing the data, that might become machine dependent a lot in next 5 to 10 years.
Yes.
But I think the real science comes all after that, right?
Yes.
So that real sciences will still be left to us scientists, and I don't see, well, who knows how fast the technology moves, but at least for the next couple of decades, I think we are certainly, it will not be easy that everything is left to the AI. Right? It's
Yes.
you these asking, well, people use chat gpt, I also use chat gpt sometimes, right? It's basically how accurate your result is depending on how good a question you ask,
Yes.
right? If you ask just a general question, chat gpt will just give you a very crude answer, right? So it's
Yes.
all your prompt engineering. So when
Prompt
you are
engineering.
looking at the data, right, how good a question you can come up, and how you are going to interpret those results that are coming from your observations or your data analysis, is, I think, up to the individual researchers. So we are going to be there with, as those, what are the movies, those ट्रांसफॉर्मर, वो कौन सी मूवीज है, आई
कौन सी वाला?
फॉरगेटिंग द नेम. Anyway, forget it. I'm not getting the name. But what I'm going to say that, okay, maybe in future you have to be coexistent with machines, right?
Machine. That robot.
Fantasy movies.
I don't watch Hollywood movies, so I cannot suggest you. I
No
don't
worries.
watch much movies. Okay, so now my question is, so this is the general picture of AI that we have in mind, like you and I. But what happens right now, like you said, okay, in the next 5 years or in a decade, what AI can do, it can process your data, it can analyze your data, but ultimately science comes after that. But nowadays, if you will be running the pipeline or you will be analyzing the data with the AI, you will get out of the field of the research because at each step there is something that every researcher should know. So
Yeah.
nowadays, a master's project or PhD first year, second year, they are extensively using AIs to processing these kind of things. So their curiosity, I mean, research flavor is dying. Do you think same or there is a difference in your thought or in my thought?
No, no, that you are absolutely correct. I think, as I said, you can make a pipeline, right? And well, there are always pipelines available, right? Right now,
Yes,
even
yes,
any observatory data you take, there are
pipeline.
pipelines, right?
Yes,
So if you just run that pipeline and just get a final product and start your science on that product, you lose a lot of information about how that pipeline, starting from the raw data, reached to a science ready data sets, right?
yes, yes,
And this is why I tell students as well that you start from the scratch, right? You don't have to analyze 100 images of variable stars manually, right? But at least one image, you start from the scratch and reach to the science ready
yes, correct.
asset. And then, of
Yes,
course, once you understand what is happening, then you can put it
you
into the
can
pipeline and then get a result,
you can do the
right?
scripting and whatever you want.
Yes, and then and I think this is where, as I said, that AI can make it easier, but if you
Yes,
are interested in very specific problems, if you have unique questions, then you might have to just go back to scratch, start doing this, you know, in a way very specific to your problem, and then reach at your answer, right? Not everything will be, you will not get, as with current pipelines, you will not get everything at suboptimal level for all kinds of questions, right? So you'll get data products that are in general good for all some kind of science or general science, but there will always be very specific problems, very specific problem statements that will require your expertise or individual researchers' expertise at all levels.
Yes. And nowadays, what I feel the people or students are using AI or ChatGPT extensively in the writings, whether it is email writing, whether it is paper writing. So, what do you think? What advice should you give to a student who is drafting email from the AI? So for now, let us forget about the writing email that I can digest even, but writing a paper for me is a more important part while writing because this is the part when you write, you think a lot. You have to think each and every statement with a single letter, whether you want to put it here or not, and that will come when you know your research very deeply. Only then you can put a statement. But nowadays, what students do, they just give a single prompt and say, "I have done this, I have done this. Write a paragraph for me." So, what advice should you give to such kind of students on how to use ChatGPT while writing a paper, while writing a research paper?
Yeah, so I would not recommend writing any papers with ChatGPT right now.
Hmm.
First of all, I think it's not correct, right?
Hmm.
If you, I think whatever I've seen in some of the project reports, and you know, it will put incorrect citations, incorrect statements. I remember at one point I was trying to make a presentation and I wanted a summary of variable star surveys that has been
Hmm.
done
Hmm.
till now.
Hmm.
So it gave 50% of incorrect information, but in a format that is absolutely what you would expect in a publication, right? So
Yes,
if
yes.
someone, if I didn't know about that, what has
Hmm.
happened in the variable star, because that is my expertise,
Yes,
I would think that okay, this is an absolutely perfectly written
correct.
statement, right, or paragraph. But since I knew what are the problems, I could identify, okay. And the same, if a graduate school student or a early PhD student writes something entirely from ChatGPT, I think
Hmm.
any expert will just identify it. It's
Yes.
there's no way you can run away from that. Right?
Hmm.
But even if you take that as an, so one way of that is that you take that as a starting point, right? Because
Hmm.
sometimes you just don't know, as a early career researcher, you don't know how to write an introduction, right?
Yes,
Where should
yes,
I start in the introduction, right?
correct.
Should I start at a very general level? Should I start with specific to my paper? So often I can imagine that students go to ChatGPT and ask questions how to write this part and that kind of thing. But I think there's an important part here, that if you do it yourself, what you are doing is, first of all, you are going back to the literature, right?
Hmm.
If I want to
Yes,
write an introduction about what has been done for the problem that I'm working on, I am
hmm,
going back to NASA ADS, I'm going back to archive, I'm going to
yes,
try and find out what has been done on this particular problem in previous papers, right?
yes, yes,
Then, even just for their citations, I'm looking at their abstract, right?
yes,
I'm sometimes just glancing their abstract. In some papers, I find something interesting in the abstract. I go into the paper and start looking into some specific sections of the paper. So, literature review is a very, very critical component of your research.
hmm,
And this is something you do a lot when you are actually starting to write the paper. Then often sometimes you are given a specific problem, you just focus on that problem and you find some relevant papers related to that problem, but you have not really done a thorough research on what has been done. Of course, your project, your idea, your data may be something new, but people
Mhm.
might have done something similar on different kind of objects, different kind of data in the past.
Yes. Yes.
So that gives you a lot of background what was done in 1980s, 90s, 2000s now. So you get a background of what your research is based on, right?
Mhm.
And then for the sections where you have actually worked on, I think then
Mhm.
there is no point if you are using chat gpt even for those sections, then you should just quit research. This is something you have done, you can at least
Yes.
write that.
Yes.
So there's no point asking chat gpt that this is what I've done, write a paragraph. If you are writing that to chat gpt that this is what I've done, you can write that in the paper itself, right?
Yes.
And I understand paper writing is not easy, and so you always write a paragraph, you read that paragraph, you rewrite that paragraph. So I think the first time it will probably take you at least 10, 15 iterations to
Yes.
make a paragraph consistent with how it should look in a publication. This is what my experience is. When I started writing a paragraph, you write a very, very general statement. I did this, I did that, and this is
Yes.
how.
Yes. Yes.
But then you realize, okay, this doesn't read like a publication. Right? Then
Yes.
you go back to a publication of on similar topic
Similar
and you
lines.
see
Yes.
how
Yes.
they
Yes.
have written it. And then you try to incorporate that knowledge or those kind of statements that they made in your paper, that okay, he said something like this, I can also say something like this. So that's how it's a basically you are enhancing your knowledge from others work,
Yes.
previous work, and then incorporating in that. So I think you learn a lot while writing papers, and that's
Mhm.
why it's a critical component of research. And relying on chat gpt for that is not at all a good idea.
Okay. Nice. That's what I wanted to discuss here. Okay. So let us come to the employment. So nowadays there is a crunch, whereas I know, till my current knowledge. So there is a crunch in the academia, and we do not have open positions or enough position that we are producing the researchers or PhDs. So first of all, I want to ask, do you also think the same? Like we do not have the enough positions with respect to the number of PhDs that India is producing currently?
Yeah, that is true. I think getting a permanent position after your PhD, or getting even a postdoc after PhD is getting very difficult, right? In India, funding has always been a problem, right? Well, now we have ENRF and other things, so hopefully that will improve.
Mhm.
But that is always the problem, and it is expected that in a country with this kind of population and this kind of younger population, and now their interest in going in higher research, higher education and research, this is somewhat expected. And um, unfortunately, there are probably positions available in a number of universities, state universities, colleges, but for some reason or another, these never get filled, or those kind of
Mhm.
problems. And especially coming for the people working on basic sciences or in astronomy and astrophysics, there's not many universities or colleges have those as specific subjects. Another problem that happens for students is that for researchers is that we don't have a lot of teaching experience, right? And
Yes.
if you are applying to a university or college, that teaching is the main component,
Yes.
then the research.
Research.
So all these combined, I think getting jobs is very, very difficult. So you have to stand out, and you have to be uh, much above than average students if you want to go to top places or places specific to astronomy and astrophysics. But I think with in the last 5 or so years, I think there are possibilities that are opening up, especially as we discussed AI and data science. There are possibilities that you can go into different fields, related fields with expertise in your data analytics, big data, artificial intelligence. Also, if you have some experimental background, R&D experience during your research, if you are doing rigorous theory, then your options are a bit limited, right? But if you
Yes.
have developed technical skills during your research career, you could definitely try and get into different industry and other departments. I know one of my seniors, he got into forensics. He did a PhD in astronomy, astrophysics. Now he's a forensic scientist. There are many different
I
examples.
know that guy, that Sharma,
Yeah,
right? Yeah.
so there are different people who do different kind of things. So I think it is strongly recommended that as a PhD student, you start developing your skills in a broader concept, right? Not just focused on one particular problem related to your research. Uh, of course, then it also depends on how flexible you are, right? So
Yes.
you if you have a focused area that okay, you want to do PhD, then you want to come to India or you want to go abroad, right? Then your options are that many limited, right? So in that case, you either have to be brilliant or you have to be flexible enough that you are uh, trying to move in different directions.
Yes. Okay, so I feel this brings to ends this episode of Physics and STEM Talks. And I hope you have enjoyed the deep discussions of astronomy, fellowships, scholarships, future aspects of the academia with Dr. Anupam Bharadwaj. If you love or you enjoyed this episode, please share with your peers, your friends, family, students with whom you think this could work. Please share as much as you can. Okay. Thank you so much for watching this episode. So